So it's same in the Navy. You're not allowed to chew gum in in a uniform. Were you allowed to put your hands in your pockets in uniform?
No.
Well, I even have pockets at that point.
It's very
Thank you,
painful.
Sean.
We said the same thing. Don't worry.
Welcome to the Scuttlebutt, everyone. I'm your host, Sean Hall, Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club, a nonprofit based in Pittsburgh, PA. The Scuttlebutt is here to highlight recent military headlines and topics and help us bridge the military-civilian divide. We ask you to please help us spread the Scuttlebutt by commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing, and ringing the bell on YouTube. We also want to connect with you, so please leave a comment on either our homepage or on YouTube, or send us an email. We'll have that link on our website or on the YouTube channel. It's a great way for us to hear your thoughts, and thank you so much. With us today, as always, are the Executive Director for the Veterans Breakfast Club, Todd DiPastino. How you doing, Todd?
Ahoy, ahoy, I'm doing well.
Wonderful. We have Marine veteran James Martin. James, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning, Lauren, a Navy veteran. How are you?
Good. I got a pocket full of sunshine as usual.
Happy to hear it. Let's dive right in. We're going to start with a new semi-segment here, as we did receive a bit of mail this past week, so we have a bit of mailbag to go through. So our mailbag this week comes from Andy Glade, who is not a veteran, but a huge fan of the Navy, has done a ton of research into the Navy, but he had an interesting response to our report on the Bonhomme Richard. And he says in his email that the Richard was actually not in dry dock. It was moored alongside a pier, and the munitions had been removed from the ship. He says that the fire suppression system, be it water, foam, or halon, was not active due to repairs being done to it. He goes on to say a couple other things. The process of repair also brings on board lots of containers, such as pallets, cardboard boxes, plastic wrap, and styrofoam packaging, which becomes garbage but is not always promptly removed. Lauren, I wanted to talk with you about this because being in the Navy, I wanted to see sort of your reaction to his email. Did it all sort of make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm just really happy that, the Scuttlebutt's getting out there and folks are engaged. So thank you for your mail. He's right. It wasn't in dry dock. It was moored alongside pier. Okay, so we'll take the hit on that one. Because he's right. Dry dock is to work on the underbelly of the ship. Whereas if it's moored alongside, yes, it's definitely still undergoing renovations, and it is a mess. And there's all kinds of contractors and, FOD, right, James, all over the place, which can get in the way and be hazardous. So yeah, a lot of what he said brought a lot of truth and a lot of clarity to our story. I know that he mentioned, the halon gas systems, are no longer, used, or I don't know exactly how he said it, Sean, but, there's a dangerous component to that chemical. And there's a lot of that on Navy ships. The one I was on still has asbestos, in it, in the insulation and stuff. But the Bonhomme Richard, I did fact check that. It does use a halon, a liquefied compressed gas that disrupts the process of a fire, and it was indeed disconnected at the time. Right. So that was definitely working at a disadvantage to the initial, control of the fire, which will bring us to our next point. He said, that there was the first responders were indeed the first souls to respond to the fire were indeed sailors. Mm-hmm. The chief of naval operations actually meritoriously promoted 9 sailors in rank due to their actions in fighting the fire, as well as a helicopter squadron. So bravo Zulu to them and their actions.
So sometimes the crew is on it while it's moored, and sometimes they are not. Is that the case?
Yeah, like I can remember working alongside Japanese contractors on board the Blue Ridge. So, it would be me working in the boiler room and, a Japanese contractor right alongside of me. So depending on what spaces are being worked on, then you might have to sleep in like on a different ship, or, you know, in a barrack. Sometimes there's not ideal sleeping conditions, but I reported to work, you know, on a daily basis, even when the ship was, because that's part of, you know, your job. You don't just sail it. You got to fix it, do the
Mhm.
preventative maintenance, and give it updates too. Got to keep it pretty.
Right. He also goes on to say, I guess his cousin who served on a sub brought up that maybe insulation could have been the cause of the fire, that there's insulation on ships now. And that could potentially have been what maybe ignited or made the fire consistently burn.
Yeah, I guess the last thing that I'll say about our mailbag is that I might tend to disagree with him, but I don't know, because in doing my research, I read a lot of engineering jargon, but what I did find was that insulation overall, while he's correct, it controls the climate, prevents moisture condensation, but it also protects against the spread of fire. So, I mean, I guess, like I said, depending on what kind of insulation was used, I don't think that might have contributed to it. But again, I wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
But from the research that I've done, hopefully that wasn't the case.
And there's been no update at this point from the arson that they were investigating. If we get more information, we'll definitely report on that here at the Scuttlebutt to keep everyone up to date on what's going on or with the Bonhomer Shard. But we also definitely thank you for sending in the letter, Andy. We really appreciate the engagement. We appreciate that. Moving on to our headlines. We wanted to take a look at Sergeant Major Thomas Patrick Payne being awarded the Medal of Honor on the 19th anniversary of the date that he decided to join 9/11. He is the first Army elite from the Army's elite Delta Force to receive the Medal of Honor. And Patrick grew up in South Carolina. He has been deployed 17 times throughout different operations: Enduring Freedom, Iraqi Freedom, New Dawn, Inherent Resolve, and to the U.S. African Command. It's a really interesting story about why he's receiving the Medal of Honor. And this happened in 2015. He was an assistant team lead. Him and his task force, along with Kurdish forces, were rescuing Iraqi hostages from an ISIS prison compound in northern Iraq. He went in with his team. They were able to save some of the Iraqi prisoners in one building. The second building was on fire. He moved over to that building, went to the roof, engaged the enemy. They were exploding suicide vests inside the building. He came back down. He went inside of the burning building. He was able to cut 2 bolts that were holding the prisoners. And both times that he had to cut the bolt, he was under enemy fire. He was in grave danger cutting both of those bolts. Was able to help the prisoners out of the building, went back into the building to make sure, a third time, to make sure that it was all clear. A great story. And we lost one of our servicemen during this mission. And they were able to save a little over 70 hostages from this prison. And his act of valor during this earned him the Medal of Honor, which was awarded to him this past week. Something I want to highlight that Sergeant Major Payne, before we start to talk about this, is something he said about receiving the honor. He said, "I don't consider myself a recipient of this medal. I consider myself a guardian of this medal. What's important for me is that my teammates' legacies will live on with this Medal of Honor." He also said in a separate address, "I want to wear it well and represent the Army." I'm interested to hear, obviously, both of our veterans' thoughts on the Medal of Honor, about Sergeant Major Payne's story, and let's dive a little bit deeper also into the Medal of Honor and you know, how long it's been around, how often it is presented to our servicemen and women. Todd, I'd like to jump to you first. How rare is it to receive the Medal of Honor?
Well, first I'm going to show my ventriloquist talent. I'm going to be able to speak without moving my lips. There we go. I'm sorry. I'm using my phone as my camera, and so every time my phone rings, my camera freezes. So anyhow, Sean, what was your question?
How important is it for someone to receive the Medal of Honor? How
How
rare is it?
important is it? How rare is it? It's 1 in a million. I mean, I think literally 1 in a million. 1 out of every million people, servicemen and women, people who serve in uniform, end up receiving a Medal of Honor. It's extremely rare, and it's gotten only more rare over time. It was twice as common, more than twice as common, 20 times as common in World War II and in Korea and even Vietnam. But the criteria is just gotten so restrictive. Yeah, the Medal of Honor was really our country's first military decoration of any consequence. There had been a couple earlier, but the Medal of Honor was really the first one. It was, first awarded in 1863 for valor in the Civil War on the Union side. And it wasn't indiscriminately handed out, but it was the criteria was kind of arbitrary at the beginning. I mean, an entire regiment from Maine received the Medal of Honor simply for re-enlisting. An 11-year-old drummer boy received it. And then, many people received it for acts of extreme valor. But then as time has gone on, it's become more and more restricted. And in 1963, the Medal of Honor, as we know it, was defined as something that requires engagement with enemy forces, extreme personal bravery demonstrated, and that bravery has to be so conspicuous as to threaten or put your own life at risk. So if you're not putting your life at risk, you're not going to receive a Medal of Honor. So for that reason, most Medals of Honor, vast majority of Medals of Honor of the 20th century and 21st century were granted posthumously. The recipient died in the act of valor. So in fact, from 1976 to 2010, I don't think there was a single living Medal of Honor recipient. So it's extremely rare, hard to get, and not something you ever want to get because it means something very bad happened.
Right. And James, Sergeant Major Payne, he had said that this mission was a no-fail mission. And I hadn't heard that before. What is a no-fail mission?
No matter the consequences at hand, we cannot lose. This mission is way too important. At all costs, we have to make this happen. And when you read, the moves and things that they had to do in order to free the hostages, free these people, and get out of harm's way, you can tell that they had every last intention of, one, doing everything they could to bring everybody home, and making sure that what they needed to do got done regardless of.
Mm-hmm.
So
when you go on a no-fail mission, James, you're not going back, even if it gets so hot, you're going to lose men, you might lose your own life, but there's no way that you're going to retreat.
Yeah, we're not going away from this one.
Mm-hmm. And reading his story, what does that sort of mean to you, James? Sort of understanding what they went through. They were under fire almost from the moment they came off the helicopter. They said it was a brownout, so very difficult to see.
Very difficult to see. Yep.
Yeah.
What it means for me is I love to read these stories. I wish there was more people that got the Medal of Honor, because I got lucky in my duty stations. I made it to the place they call the Basic School in Quantico, Virginia. At the main office where the officers check in, there's all these plaques on the wall with a bunch of, Silver Star recipients and so on and so forth like this. While I was in Quantico, Virginia, I didn't fully grasp the concept of some of the officers they had in place to teach the lieutenants, until one day I'm walking the halls and I'm reading these citations. I go, wait, that's my CO. And I'm reading his citation, and I'm going, my CO's a legend. They write books about what he did. And so there's men out there that have done incredible things, and So if you read some of the Silver Star recipients, they'll rival. Like it's like you got the Medal of Honor, you got the Silver Star. Y'all did just about the same thing. It's incredible. So the ability to be one of the very few in to get that medal, that means a lot. It does. And either which way, I tip my hat. They write books about guys like this.
Right. Lauren, I wanted to pose to you the same question: is sort of reading through his story, his experience. Does it mean something to you when a serviceman receives the Medal of Honor? Is it so rare? I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Sergeant Major Payne said about being a guardian of the medal. My first and only interaction with a Medal of Honor recipient was with Colonel Jack Jacobs when I first came kind of into the veteran scene over a decade ago in New Jersey. And he gave a speech and he wrote a book. And when he was being introduced at the podium, they introduced him as a winner of the Medal of Honor. And oh, there was an uproar, right? I mean, that is like, you just can't say that. So basically, he opened with explaining why it's so important to say you're a recipient. And I think Sergeant Major Payne beautifully took that to the next level and called himself a guardian of it. And the reason I say that is because no matter what I read about saving the hostages and, you know, all of the details of the story, what just sat with me was there were two team leads, you know, one building one and then building two. And there was immediately kind of like a KIA of the adjacent sergeant major who was in building two. What I'm wondering is, why didn't the other sergeant major, Master Sergeant Josh Wheeler, KIA, during that mission? Do we think he'll be posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor because he was, you know, kind of doing the same thing as his other sergeant major? And I'm wondering why, like, what sets that apart? And that's really, as a sailor who's never had really much, I've never had any combat, any boots on the ground or anything like that. So I don't have so much to add to this, but that's my question. And maybe James will be able to help me understand better, you know, why they chose Sergeant Major Payne over Sergeant Major Wheeler.
I am in agreement with you because everybody was there, everybody was involved. It takes a team effort, which is why I do appreciate when I've seen a lot of YouTube videos and watched articles and watch videos and articles where they're like, I didn't win this. I wear this for everybody. So it'll be interesting to see because he gave the ultimate. You can't give better than your life for this. So it's worth, that is definitely a good question worth noting.
You know, I remember John Haw, who has come to our Veterans Breakfast Club events and told his story. He fought in Afghanistan, Silver Star recipient. He was with Sergeant Jared Monty when Monty did the actions that warranted the Medal of Honor for Monty. And he said at our event, you know, he had the Silver Star with him, and he said, "You don't want this. Nobody wants this. You don't win this. You get this because something really, really terrible happened." And you always have to recognize that. This is not something that you know, join the military and you're out in battle and you want to win a medal. That's not how it works. It's given to you as a kind of a consolation prize for something terrible that went down that you were a part of and that you are willing to risk your life to be a part of. It's just it's an awesome thing to behold. And that quotation from him about being the guardian of the medal and not the recipient is also, Lauren, I think you put it absolutely perfectly. It is such a meaningful, rich statement. And I think it reflects the best of the attitudes that I get from our veterans. There's been some psychological profiling of people who have received the Medal of Honor. What do they have in common? And they have a lot of things in common. They make very tight connections emotionally with people. They work well, in teams and in groups. They have a high tolerance for risk, as you could imagine. But one of the things that they have is humility. They're humble people. They're not people who brag or who show off, and I think that statement is a statement of humility, and statements of humility are statements of wisdom. Maybe it's actually the other way around. When you hear wisdom, always has humility to it. Always. It's a recognition that the world is bigger than you. The forces are bigger than you. If you hear something that doesn't have humility in it, then it's not wisdom. I hear wisdom from our veterans all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Todd, really, I just want to compliment on what you said. And I asked another veteran friend of mine, a female vet who was a Marine, her name is Frankia, about this, and just really trying to figure out, what to bring to the table here. And she said exactly what you said, Todd. Nobody sets out to win these medals. Like, that's just not a thing. And I just loved that response. So I want to highlight that and see, what James has to say about that maybe too, because that was another profound statement, right? Like, maybe part of that civilian military gap, and you see a chest full of ribbons and medals, and that shows how prestigious, or how great you are. But really, in the veterans' mind, that's no. Probably each one of those has maybe a painful memory attached to it, or something like that. So no one sets out to win these things, but when you do receive the Medal of Honor, unlike any other award, I will point out, as of 2019, the rate was $1,300 and some odd dollars a month. So you get that on top. So it's a financial bonus, much like, the Nobel Prize or something. You get money, and you also get a 10% increase in your retirement pay. And there's a lot of scuttlebutt around. Is that enough? Is that enough for the most, the highest award that you can earn in the military? What do you guys think about that?
Yes, something weird. Oh, I'll jump in and just say something weird happened after Vietnam. Medals of Honor got increasingly rare, extremely rare. So that, for the first 7 or 8 years of the, war on terror, there were only a handful awarded, all of them posthumously. Very, very hard to get a Medal of Honor recognition. And I suspect it's because the Medal of Honor has just grown in stature to such an extreme, height, that I think the military is terrified of awarding one to somebody who, it could be shown later, maybe didn't deserve it, or maybe had something disreputable in their background, somebody who is other than a saint. And I think it's kind of the equivalent of, like, the Catholic Church going through the trial to award somebody sainthood. You have a devil's advocate there who's always making the argument against sainthood. And I think that happens in these Medal of Honor nomination review boards.
Yeah.
James?
I remember when I first came in, you would see, elder staff NCOs and things like that, higher grade officers. They would have all these stacks on them. You're sitting there and you just have like 1 or 2 ribbons. And after time went on, and it's like second deployment in, my stack got decently sized. And I remember that there would be young Marines that came up and were like, ooh, and we're like, you don't want that. You don't want all this. You can sit there and look at somebody's stack out of this world. That's fine. They can have that. Do you know what each one of those medals meant? And they're like, no, that's time away from family, kids, birthdays missed, friends lost, people that didn't come home, holes in their body. Sometimes they don't even get the medals for the holes in their body. Like, you don't sit here and go, "Ooh, look, I got a parade on my chest." It's not. Somebody sacrificed for each pin, medal, ribbon on their chest. There was a sacrifice made. So it's not. It's like you said. It's a consolation prize.
The other thing that jumped out at me about Sergeant Major Payne's story, and that is, get this: He joined the military in 2002, 18 years ago. He's been on 17 deployments.
Mm-hmm.
17. He has a wife and 3 children.
Mm-hmm.
That's not right. There's something wrong here. And I think it gets to how, I'm going to editorialize, but I think special operations is just being overused. I fear, here's my fear, that our country is exploiting or taking advantage of the courage and the willingness to sacrifice of people like Sergeant Major Payne, a tiny, tiny percentage of our population who are bearing the burden of, projecting American power around the world. It just, the price is too high. The price is too high.
But I would challenge to ask, of those 17, how many times did he volunteer? And I say this from experience. If there was a deployment going, you needed somebody to go, I'll ride.
Delta Force, I think, is going to probably raise that hand a lot, right, James?
Those people, the dedication, in a lot of our troops, especially now, those 17 deployments, that it didn't shock me at 17, not even a little bit. That means he just went 6 months, came back home, something else is going hot. Because remember, if he's special forces and he's been that way his whole career, those numbers are small. So whenever they call up the next team, there's only but so much time in between. If you have X amount of teams, he's probably banging them out every so often. 6 months gone, couple months back home, couple months for redeployment training, back at it again, and just keeps it going. That was the rotation. Artillery units are like that. Back in the beginning of when we could shoot artillery a little bit more, we had a rotation that was, you came home, you got a few months off, the next team is already on its way. So you're coming home, they're leaving, you get the break, they come home. Hey, if you want to go again, go again. But if you don't go now, the next one running is going to be you. So, all right, let's dance. Let me work on my tan some more, I guess.
No, I think you're right. I'm sure you're right that a lot of these were volunteer deployments. Still, there's something wrong about it. I just think it's too much. It's too much of a burden for a handful of people to carry, and it does go along with our country's increasing reliance on the United States Special Command, Special Operations Command. 130, 140 countries around the world in the past 15 years are operations going on right now in over 100 countries of special operations. A lot of them are humanitarian and advising operations. They're not all, engaging with the enemy, but some of them are. And it's just, special operations has doubled in size in the past 12 or 14 years, quintupled almost in budget. It's like our whole foreign policy has devolved onto this 70,000 people who are in special ops. Every branch of service, even the Marine Corps, James, has special operations now. They would never, there were the Marine Rangers in World War II, and they were disbanded because the argument was the Marines said everybody's elite, everybody's special ops.
Yeah, we had special ops. Even whenever I was getting out, they were getting a brand new barracks and everything at the back of Camp Lejeune.
Yeah,
And it was very interesting to hear that. But such as policy where a lot of countries don't want that big footprint on the ground.
that's
They
it.
don't want
That's it.
10,000. They'll take 800.
That's it.
But 800 you're gonna get. I wouldn't
James,
want it.
and that's it. I mean, that is the benefit to special operations is you have that small footprint. It's relatively inexpensive. When you have a small footprint in a country like, Niger or Kenya or Yemen or Syria or the Philippines, you're not going to generate an insurgency against you like we saw with the occupation of Iraq. It absolutely does make sense. I just worry about a couple things. Number one, the burden being carried by the 70,000 who are in special operations. Number two, kind of a lack of transparency and accountability. And it's almost a further remove of our civilian world and our civilian political leaders from the action on the ground, around the world. I worry that we've become too removed from special operations so that we can't even really keep track as a citizen to what's happening around the world in our name.
Yes.
This is great, and I think we can even tackle this in a future Scuttlebutt episode, because there's some pretty big headlines about this topic, about how many servicemen and women are deployed and redeployed and redeployed, whether volunteer or not. They are bearing a huge burden for the rest of the society, and I think that's definitely worthy of something that we should look at talking about more. I'd like to move on to a quick update about our Stars and Stripes, coming on the heels of President Trump's tweet to continue funding the publication Stars and Stripes. The Defense Department is rescinding its order to shut down the newspaper. The Pentagon's budget, though, has yet to be finalized by the Senate, so we're in process for that. So I still hope that Stars and Stripes can be saved. And that is our brief update on Stars and Stripes.
I'll give that a Bravo Zulu.
Bravo Zulu.
Bravo Zulu. Can you tell me, what does Bravo Zulu stand for? BZ. Why do you say Bravo Zulu? Does anybody know? Scuttlebutt listeners, we want to hear from you.
Yes.
Where does that come from?
Do they say Bravo Zulu in the Marine Corps, or do they just say, like, good job, man?
Get
Right.
some.
Okay,
That's
got
it.
it.
Go get it. Get some. Yep.
Get some. Okay.
Thank you for your service. The thing that most of us civilians are saying to our servicemen and women, it's pretty common now to go up and say thank you for your service, but we wanted to ask the question of, is this the right way to show appreciation? And we've talked with a lot of veterans at VBC. We've said thank you a lot, but is this accepted the way that we think it is as civilians? When we say thank you, is that received the same way that we want it to be? And I found a great article from 2015 from the New York Times by Matt Ritchell, and he reported that, this is a quote from the article, Mike Friedman, a Green Beret, calls it the thank you for your service phenomenon. To some recent vets, by no stretch all of them, the thanks comes across as shallow, disconnected, a reflexive offering from people who, while meaning well, have no clue what soldiers did over there or what motivated them to go, and who would never have gone themselves nor sent their own sons and daughters. It's interesting to me because as a civilian, I want to say thank you, and I think it does come from an honest place, but I hadn't thought, how is that being received by the veterans that I'm talking to? And I wanted to have this discussion with Lauren and James and Todd. You've been with the VBC for 12 years, and you've said thank you, I'm sure, a lot and in different ways, and figure out if this is a good way to do it, or should we do it? Should we not do it? How do you feel about it? Lauren, can I opt to you first to say, how do you feel when someone comes up and says thank you for your service?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. And I don't really have, as passionate a position on this as some of the articles that I read, but I do understand and relate to a veteran's reaction, as far as it could be triggering. There was an example of a young woman who lived 45 miles from a base, so she would stop in her uniform on the way home and stop to get takeout food in her uniform, and she would just have complete strangers coming up to her thanking her for her service. It made her feel a little bit awkward or something to that effect. So I do understand all of those arguments, but me personally, I don't mind, and I think it's nice, and we'll get further into it, but I really don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah. And James, do you feel the same way when someone comes up and thanks you for your service? Does it feel off-putting? Does it feel like, whoa, you don't know me? Or, does it feel nice?
Usually whenever somebody comes up and tells me, thank me for my service, I make sure to reply back with, thank you for your support, because it's funny how that article talked deep about how they wouldn't send their sons or daughters to go, but I did. So they're saying thank you because it's something that they wouldn't do, or they just genuinely have a love and appreciation for the military. So I always say thank you for your support, because I know you're saying it to me, but it's in lieu of what I did along to my left and right who went before me, who's going to come after me. I'm just a direct. I'm right in front of you, you know. So I always take it graciously because I think that's the best way to do it. I don't want to come off-putting.
Right. And
Yeah, but you don't really like it when somebody says thank you for your service. Has anybody ever bought you like a coffee at Starbucks or something like that? No.
No,
You need
no.
to wear more Marine garb. That's why.
Not gonna do it. It's not gonna happen.
is there a
Apparently,
reason
Why not?
you're
Yeah,
not
why
wearing?
not?
Yeah.
apparently you've never been to Jacksonville, North Carolina. There's enough of us around. There's I was stationed in North Carolina for a long period of time, Marine Town, um, and you just didn't go around showboating it. You know, you didn't wear the giant. Not everybody wore the giant coats or Marine Corps this, that, and another when they left work. Um, because it's like, wow, you're a Marine in a town full of Marines at the bar. Go lay down. Just stop it. Like, so even after that was said and done, and my days have been over, I think I have one shirt, and it just deals with artillery. That's it. It's the only one that I wear out, and I even rarely wear that out
You wait,
because
James.
I
You wait
don't
till
want.
you're my age. You wait till you're my age. You start wearing it. You'll have
Start
the
wearing
big
the hats and the
leather
coats and
jacket.
everything.
Oh yeah.
Not gonna happen. So I just don't want it to be known by everybody. I don't want it to be offsetting. I don't want it to somebody to feel like they have to say thank you. And it could be an awkward situation. And even I don't even say thank you for your service when I see people. It's when I see the Vietnam hats, I say welcome home.
Excellent.
Because I've read, seen how they were treated. There's in a time where even my kids have gotten used to it, to where they see him, and if I didn't catch it, I'll hear them say "Welcome home," and I'll look and I'll catch the hat. Hey, man,
Great thing to
and
say.
that's as far as it goes.
Mhm.
But it's just a gentle nod. I see you, and but when it comes to civilians, I thank you for your support, because it's not just me you're going to say that to. So let me give it back to you.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes to what we've been saying about Sergeant Major Payne, and I'm not a recipient of the Medal of Honor. I'm the guardian. I mean, you feel conspicuous, I imagine, if you're out and there are no other people in uniform around, and people are coming up to you, and absolutely, I would imagine that would be an awkward thing. This issue has come up at the Veterans Breakfast Club many times over the years, and for a few events, we've actually had a wonderful back and forth between the Vietnam generation veterans and post 9/11 generation veterans, going back and forth about how they feel about thank you for your service. And you can imagine the Vietnam generation veterans are like, I cannot be thanked enough. I mean, we love it. I mean, we feel that this is so long overdue. We were ignored. We were disparaged even after we came home from Vietnam. And it's just, it's maybe too little too late, but it feels good to be recognized for, what we did. Whereas so many of the young vets are like, oh man, it just makes me uncomfortable. And some even will say, as Lauren said, some young vets are even resentful of the thank you for your service. And I guess my feeling is, as a non-veteran like Sean, I feel it's. I always say, like, well, what do you want us to say? Do you want us to ignore you? Do you want us not to say anything? Do you want us to have a conversation? Like what would you rather that we do? And that's where it gets interesting, I think. I think my view of thank you for your service is it's a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem. And it's a symptom of the civilian military divide, of the civilian military gap. I mean, people like me want to connect, want to get to know, those who are serving, but there are so few people serving, and they're not always, in our environment where we are. We don't quite know how to do it. So it's a symptom of this problem of the civilian military divide. But I don't see it as a problem in itself. I mean, I think it's, in fact, it's like, just like a fever is a symptom of an infection. that actually helps to fight the infection. I think thank you for your service is a symptom of the problem that's actually trying to solve the problem, trying to make a connection from it with a civilian and a veteran or somebody active duty.
Couple questions from that. Well, first one being, have you found, Todd, that there is a different response to thank you for your service from the draftees from Vietnam and the volunteers from the current wars? Is there?
Yeah, I do remember. I remember being with somebody, a wonderful Marine, if you could believe it. He was drafted into the Marines in 1969. And can you imagine a worse fate? I mean, it's one thing to volunteer like James, but be drafted into the Marine Corps. Okay. Anyhow,
I don't see the
he
problem.
was drafted into the Marine Corps. He was drafted into the Marine Corps, and somebody said, "Thank you for your service," and he said, "Wait, wasn't my choice. It wasn't my choice at all. Don't thank me." So yeah, I think there is a difference.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to dive into a little bit more about other ways that we can thank veterans for their service as well in a minute. But Lauren, you look like you had a thought.
Yeah. I don't think you're, with me and James, these two veterans that you have on this show today, I don't think you're going to get much pushback. We're not that type, right? Mm-hmm. But you're forcing me to continue to think about this right now and really have a stance. So I'm going to take one. My stance is, you know, we talk about other ways, and there was a list of 10 things, which Sean, I know you're going to pivot into here in a minute, but the number one way was write a check. And so if somebody came up to me or give them $100 bill. So if I was wearing my Navy shirt and my hat, my cover, and I went out into public and somebody came up and gave me $100 bill, I would be so offended. I would be like, are you kidding me? Like, do you think I need a check or your $100 bill? Like, no, I work for a living. Thanks anyway. So that's my stance. Like, I think that a lot of veterans, I think it's a very personal, unique, individual experience and response, right? My experience in the military, it's not a blanket statement. You know, I'm not going to speak for all veterans, and I hope I don't have like an angry mob at my door later. But what I do want to say is, like, man, pick your battles. Like, why are you going to get angry at civilians for saying thank you?
See, Lauren can say that and I can't.
I'm saying, man.
Yeah.
This is why I ask you to plant a flag, Lauren, because I love your opinions.
Yes.
They're very passionate.
And her passion is basically because she understands that it's bigger than the individual. That thank you is coming from a place, and like your article said, it could come from, I won't send my kids, I could never, or I try. Lauren, I was almost in the Navy. See, so we've heard all these other stories and things like that, and so it's like, for whatever reason you didn't serve, you still have an appreciation for those that do. Yeah. So just be grateful. It's better. I'll take that over an incident I had at Fleet Week in New York. I went to Fleet Week. Me and 5 Marines in dress blues at Union Station, eating at McDonald's. Somebody came in, called us a baby killer, threw ketchup on us, ran out the door. Us in dress blues chased them down the street. We almost got him, but the New York cops got to him first. So we stopped. They got him. They booked him. They went and bought us lunch and like helped us like clean off and everything else like that. And at that moment, I was like, if this is what every Vietnam vet had to go through for more than just 5 minutes, this is what they had to experience every time they walked the streets and somebody knew, I'm good. From that point on, it was from that point on, I think it was 2007. From that point on, every time I see one, welcome home, because I lived what you lived for 5 minutes.
Wow. That's an
important. And in one of the articles, it's interesting you use the spitting reference, James. In one of the articles in prep for today, it said, I think it was, he said, I would rather, you know, be spit on, because at least that would show emotion. And I'm paraphrasing, but really search one of those articles, we can find the exact example. And I thought that was just a stretch too, you know?
Yeah, like, that's a stretch too far, man.
I'm pretty sure I'd rather hear someone say thanks for your service than spit upon. So.
That's an assault charge. No, I don't need that.
Yeah.
Right.
I tell you, you'll never convince a Vietnam veteran that there's any problem with thanking any veteran for their service. You're never going to convince a Vietnam vet of that.
So I'll probably continue thanking veterans for their service, but Todd, are there other ways that you have found at VBC that to say thank you? Obviously, your long years with VBC and serving veterans and bringing their stories out, I think that's a phenomenal way to say thank you. But have you found other ways?
It's funny because this conversation has made me realize I actually don't go up to people and say thank you for your service. I don't. I will say, when were you in the Marines? Or, I noticed your Navy hat. What ship did you serve on? Or something like that. That's how, or usually actually what I have is I have a stack of Veterans Breakfast Club newsletters and I stick it in their hand and start the conversation that way. But I really think, one kind of slogan or motto that the Veterans Breakfast Club has had over the years is the best way to thank a veteran is to listen. The best way to thank a veteran is really to invite the veteran to tell his or her story, or as much of it as they want to share, because the recipient, the listener, is always going to get something valuable. We talked about wisdom. I think that's what I get more than anything else from the stories I hear, even from, young vets. I think you gain wisdom before your time. And I think it's also good for the vet. I think it's good for those who have served to kind of make a connection and feel like that their story is being recognized and heard by people who, don't really understand what serving in the armed forces is like. So best way to thank a veteran, I'd say, is to listen.
And I'd go a step beyond that is if you listen and you don't understand where they were at, that you look up the battle or you look up that time frame. You kind of understand a bit more about where they served, the experiences they may have had. That takes just that step further of a little bit more self-knowledge, self-learning of understanding what it is. And that has helped me because then I can come back to that same veteran and have a more in-depth conversation of like, wow, I never knew that this particular city was that dangerous and that you were a part of that. You gain much more appreciation that way, I think.
Yes. You hear that a Marine served in the Second Battle of Fallujah, and then you read about the Second Battle of Fallujah, and it's like, oh my gosh, that is not anything that I could ever have imagined.
Right. And you'll hear those stories at VBC. It's an easy plug here in the sense that just come to our VBC event. You're going to hear a lot of veteran stories and you'll appreciate a lot of what they're talking about and the experiences that they went through. I think a lot of what we do at VBC is bring the stories to you, and we hope that you would enjoy listening to them. But you can find more information on our website. That does it for our main story. Jumping into our Scuttlebutt round, we're going to spin the wheel. And
no
James.
whammies, no whammies.
James is up first this week.
It's me. So my scuttlebutt will be for the cloud that's going over around the Pittsburgh Steelers. Former Ranger Alejandro Villanueva chose to put the name of Sergeant First Class Al Cash with this giant push for him to get the Medal of Honor. It's been in conversation since August, and the team was going to use a young man whose life his life was lost in the city of Pittsburgh, but he took it upon himself to use a African-American veteran who died on a roadside bomb, and they're pushing because he'll be the first African-American if it goes through to get the Medal of Honor in Iraq and Afghanistan timeframe. First one. So it's going to be interesting.
African Americans are way, way underrepresented among Medal of Honor recipients historically. There are way, way fewer than there should be.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a woman's never been on the receiving end of a Medal of Honor.
I don't think so.
One.
Really?
One.
Yeah.
One of the over, over 3,500 recipients, one woman.
One woman, a surgeon, Civil War surgeon. It was taken away from her, and it was re-awarded, like in the Carter administration. Mary Walker.
Who does that?
Unbelievable.
Rest in peace, Mary.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's
But
a hero.
poor Alejandro, he had some light shown on him. What was it, 2 years ago, when he decided to come out and listen to the anthem, and everyone else kind of stayed in the locker room. And I think that I've met him a couple of times. I think he just has the best intentions. He's just a sweetheart, a big gentle giant, and I think I just love his motives here. And I think I'm really just hoping that the press and any kind of hoopla surrounding this is in a positive light, because I think he's a solid guy, and
Hmm.
an outstanding, honorable example of a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I think it's also interesting when you think about his motivations. I think not only do they come from him being an former Army Ranger, but he's also an immigrant. He
Hmm.
really appreciates this country in a way that a lot of us who are born into the country, don't. I mean, he really values his citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good scuttlebutt, James.
Todd, would you like to go next?
Sure. I was thinking of talking about Mary Walker, the only woman to receive a Medal of Honor, but I thought I would talk instead about the very first Medal of Honor recipient, Private Jacob Parrott from Ohio, who in April 1862 volunteered to be part of what was called Andrews Raiders. James Andrews, who was a civilian, a spy, a Union spy, kind of came up with this cockamamie idea in Tennessee to sneak behind enemy lines all the way down near Clear, Atlanta, steal a train, a passenger train, and then drive the train all the way to Chattanooga, destroying the rails and the bridges as they went. And they did. They bought tickets on a passenger train. They took the train north. It's right about the route that I-75 is now from Atlanta to Chattanooga. And but they didn't have much time to tear up the tracks or anything, because they got the tickets on the passenger train. Then the passenger train stopped in a town. The engineer and the conductor went to get breakfast, and while they were getting something to eat, this crew commandeered the locomotive called the General, and they took it north. And the engineer came back and chased them on a handcart, which wasn't too hard to do because the General was only going at 15 miles an hour. And so they couldn't really stop to destroy any bridges or any rails or anything like that. Finally, the locomotive ran out of steam about 18 miles south of Chattanooga. All of the team, the 22 of Andrews Raiders, were all captured. Some of them were able to escape. Some of them were executed because they were civilian spies. And Jacob Parrott, who was in the Union Army, he was made prisoner, and he was held for about a year as a POW. He was beaten interrogated for information, finally kind of sent back north in a prisoner exchange. And he met with Lincoln himself, and Jacob Parrott received the first Medal of Honor for stealing the General. And there's a good book about it, if you want to read it, by Russell Bond, called, I think, Stealing the General. Check it out. Great story.
Okay. Here's my scuttlebutt. 94-year-old Suddy Economy, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. Suddy has a wish to have his casket designed as a pack of juicy fruit gum, the classic yellow juicy fruit gum. He served in World War II, and if you know a little bit about that history, Wrigley's stopped production of both juicy fruit, double mint, and spearmint in the civilian world to make sure that all World War II soldiers in active duty had some gum to chew. So he was a big fan of it then, and he's still a big fan of it to the point that he wants his coffin designed as a pack of juicy fruit gum. At first, his request to Mars Wrigley Company was denied, which made me sad. But guess what? We have good news. It has been granted. Thanks to the funeral home and a buddy of his, they did a Facebook campaign, and Mars graciously said, the president said, yes, not only can you use our logo and trademark for your final resting place, but we're going to send you some juicy fruit. And they sent him 250 packs of juicy fruit gum, which Suddy continues to hand out at doctor's offices and whenever he's out and about. It's kind of his trademark to create awareness and talk about World War II, the memorial that he's a part of, and everyone that served then. So I'm glad you got your wish granted, Suddy. But he's doing well. He's on the mend, so I don't think he'll be needing the juicy fruit casket anytime soon.
They're going to have to send him more juicy fruit.
I think so.
Great, because during the war, juicy fruit was not available to civilians. It was not available on the home front. Wrigley withheld their best chewing gum, sent it only overseas, and the people back home chewed something called Orbits, which was like second-rate, third-rate gum.
Yeah, and Orbit made a comeback recently.
Yeah, yes, it has.
There's a
Dirty
whole
Mouth clean it up with Orbits, right? For the commercials.
There's
but
a
yeah,
whole
you're
scuttlebutt
exactly
of
right.
just debating on which best is the best bubble gum out there.
There
No one has a favorite.
Chew gum.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, don't really chew gum right here.
Thanks for playing.
Not a big gum chewer.
We weren't allowed to chew it in uniform.
Yeah, no, you're not, are you?
No, couldn't walk and chew gum. No.
You're a wino too. Don't chew gum.
So it's same in the Navy. You're not allowed to chew gum in a uniform. Were you allowed to put your hands in your pockets in uniform?
No.
Well, I even have pockets at that point.
It's very
Thank you,
painful.
Sean.
We said the same thing. Don't worry.
Well, you still got to carry stuffs. You got to carry all your stuff somewhere.
Stuff.
That's what you had the cargo pockets for. Remember, you could stuff things in the cargo pockets, just not your hands in your actual pockets.
Oh, the 90s.
Wow.
The
Hey,
final bit of
I still wear cargo pants.
Don't worry.
course you do.
I am wearing them right now.
I'm about to say I still have cargo. I have cargo shorts for the.
I have cargo shorts. I have cargo shorts.
Cargo shorts.
I've moved on from the cargo short phase. Of course, now I have an 8-month-old, so I should go back to that phase so I can carry everything.
See, it'll save you. Yes.
Yeah.
Proper weight distribution when you're carrying too much. Diapers, wipes on one side, wallet, keys.
Oh yeah.
Cargos.
Oh yeah.
It's true. My last bit of scuttlebutt comes from a headline. Robot dogs are being manufactured by Ghost Robotics. They are called Vision 60 UGVs. They are being developed to help defend bases. They are able to operate in any terrain or environment and can execute a wide range of tasks while carrying sensors and radio equipment. They'll be a part of the military's advanced battle management system, which uses AI and data analysis to detect and counter threats. They're calling them indestructible. There's a guy who throws a wrecking ball into one. It's a robot dog, and it just sort of stutters and then stands right back up. These things do stairs. They're walking all over the place. It's incredible that, the future is here.
Wow. That's interesting.
I need one.
Yeah.
Don't have to feed it treats. You don't have to clean up after it.
Do I have to walk it? Like, I don't.
Plug it in. Charge it.
That's neat. That reminds me of when I first heard of the military. They made some sort of like bug or butterfly that had like a camera in it so that it could fly and get some recon. I mean, what will I think of next? I think that's great.
Hopefully the flying car, which I have heard now exists. So thank you all for tuning in for the 3rd episode of The Scuttlebutt. Again, we ask you to please help spread The Scuttlebutt by liking, sharing, subscribing, ringing the bell. But also, since we now have a mailbag, please email us. Let us know what you think. Comment. We love engaging with you there as well. And also, please check out our website at veteransbreakfastclub.org. We're a nonprofit in Pittsburgh, PA, connecting everyone, veterans and civilians, through connecting, educating, healing, and inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us.